Hey, welcome to Small Biz Life. We're so excited to have you in this new format. We're actually recording the podcast live on Facebook. And so, if you want to be able to join us for one of these recording sessions, you can do that. You can actually, if you go to facebook.com/smallbizlifepodcast, you can like our page. And then make sure you get notifications from us and you can actually watch us live, which is cool because you actually get the podcast a little bit earlier if you do that too.
Yes.
So that's
this is technically next week's. It's like a time machine right here. So this is actually next week's podcast. So you get here a little early. Later on, the audio will still come through all your devices. So if you want to listen to it on the road or wherever, you still have the option to do that as well too.
And you can also, if you go to smallbizlife.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, you can actually have video and you can watch us on video if you want doing the podcast. So that's very cool. The best way to get to the YouTube channel right now, if you go to smallbizlife.com, there's a link to YouTube there. Because I don't have the link with me.
Yeah, see, I was logging to YouTube right here while you get us going.
Awesome. So this week we are, and this is so cool. We actually have like people who are watching this live. So it's pretty awesome. So this week we are talking about the one thing that every proposal that goes out the door needs to have. And I think this is something that's going to be a little bit controversial, because this is a practice that a lot of people are using, that drives me crazy. And I think it's really disingenuous.
And I think not using is just as bad.
So you need to have in every proposal is you need to have a reasonable date in which the proposal is no longer valid. Now, the reason that we decided to do an episode on this was because we went to a home show over the weekend. And a lot of the companies that are doing proposals, their big thing is this proposal is good for a year. Okay. So it's kind of funny because one of the people I actually kind of got into, not really an argument, but a discussion. And I pissed off their salesperson.
It kind of felt like an argument.
Well, I was not yelling. There was no yelling. There was I was questioning. So here's the thing. I said, how can you do a proposal that's good for a year? Because, especially like a lot of these are like roofing contractors. And so with the price of oil, being really unstable, there's a lot of proposals in the state of Connecticut to increase the minimum wage. And so if you give me a proposal now, they're talking about raising the minimum wage in July and then raising it again in January. So, how do you put together a proposal that's good for a year? Are you inflating the proposal? And that's where she got really mad. That's where she got kind of mad. So, but the thing that I'm seeing from a lot of service providers is they are not putting in a date at all.
Which is, I think, worse.
Yeah, no, I absolutely do. Because here's the thing. When you're trying to plan out your workload, you need to know when people are going to be engaging to do work with you. And if you do a whole bunch of proposals and you send those out, and there's no time frame on when people have to engage with you to take advantage of it, how do you plan your work?
Yes.
Because what happens if, all these people come back to you and say, okay, now I'm ready. I'd like you to do the work now. And it's 6 months down the road and you're slammed. Or you've raised your prices. So you need to make sure that you put in a date. And we're going to kind of talk about how to choose a date based on, different proposals. And you might see Jeff kind of getting up and down because you might notice if you're watching this on video that the baby's actually in the rocker behind him. So the two things that I'm seeing in business right now is I'm seeing where people are putting in no date whatsoever, or they're putting in a really long date, like the proposal's good for a year. Okay. And, some of the issues with that, it's really hard to price when you are trying to give a price that's good for a year. There's a lot of inflation in that pricing. And the thing that I saw because we actually had somebody come in, do a proposal, and they had a proposal that was good for a year. And then they had a proposal that was good that day. And
I thought that was a clever change to it.
It was. The difference in price was more than 25%.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, I mean, that's a huge swing. Okay. It was more than 25% of the cost. And it kind of at least for me, and I don't know, like for those of you that are watching live, it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, because I'm like, really? The difference in price is 25%. So that tells me that you are putting in 25% extra padding into the cost of your estimate. And I'm pretty sure that if I called you back in 4 or 5 days, I'd probably get pretty close to the 25% off cost. But so it kind of, it kind of lost a lot of trust with me to see something like that. Somebody's like, wow, that's a lot. Somebody in the chat said that their company uses 30 days. And that's what I like. When you're putting either no time limit or you're advertising that the price is good for a year, you are inviting people to get inquiries who really aren't serious about getting the work done.
Yeah. And I think this is like a trade show real risk, because you're trying to get as many people, and I'm sure you will get additional sales from people who maybe were kind of not really thinking about it, but you sort of add the psychology of making them think that everything's going to explode if they don't do it right away. And you probably get some sales of people who otherwise you wouldn't have been able to get. The problem is, especially if you have informed people in front of you, and I think Kristin has the exact same thing, is when you tell me you can give me a 1-year quote, I assume one of two things. There's so much fat built in that you're not worried about it. And by fat, I just mean there's so much extra cushion to your profit in there that you're just not worried, if I accept it within a year. And the other thing is you're a novice. And I'm now concerned that if I think you're a novice, that possibly you're not going to be able to perform the work, because I'm going to sit there, get started with you, and because of these other prearranged deals you've come up to, you start losing money and maybe start having a cash flow issue while you're on my job.
Right. But it's interesting because one of the things that we talked about a couple months ago in HQ, which is our membership site, we talked about evaluating leads. And so it seems like, if you're giving people a year in which to act on this deal, then you're going to have a lot of cold leads that are coming into your funnel. And you're, especially if you're doing anything with a proposal, you're either doing a discovery call or, you're sending somebody out if it's construction, and that costs money, right? And that costs time. And so you're not evaluating your leads really well before you're sending your salespeople in. Okay. And so it's going to naturally increase your cost of doing business. So you want to make sure that you're really evaluating those leads. And if you say like, hey, is this something that you want to do in the next 30 days? Then if the person says yes, you want to move forward. But if the person says, nah, I'm not really sure if this is something I want to do, it makes your job much harder to actually sell it. Yeah. Even if it's something that you really think the person needs, if they're not convinced, not only are you trying to sell yourself that, hey, you want me to do this job, but you're also having to sell the fact that you need the job done, period. And that is a much harder sell than just, hey, you should hire my company.
And I'm not sure if we've done an episode on have we done an episode on markets data yet? No. Okay, that's just HQ. So like you maybe prefer terms like BANT, which is ways where you can measure customers to determine if they're an inquiry or if they're this hot lead. You're going to add in a lot of time and like Kristin said, on people who might not ever be. Maybe they're only interested in getting the job through you if they get that $30,000 free window installation or whatever you're happy to give away at the time. It was like, a salesman said, well, if we do this for like, a sixth of the price, you would of course do it, wouldn't you? And I was like, yeah. So if you want to sign that contract right now, I'll do it with you right now. But, you're not going to sign that contract with me, so don't try and use that on me. And which tells I got where he was going with it, and I appreciated it. But, the thing you have to realize is, it's like a lot of people who you can interact with, whether you get them into your email list or you meet them at a trade show, aren't necessarily interested in doing business with you. They want that free thing. Mm-hmm. And
I got to say, that is one of the fallacies of doing a giveaway that's unrelated to your business. We saw a lot of people at the show that were signing up, because you could win a free TV or you could win a vacation. And it had nothing to do with like, this was a roofing contractor, Right.
Yes, you have people, who work there who want to win the TV, who might or might not even own a home. So, it's like, okay, I live in an apartment. I still want to sign up for your roofing contract because I want a chance to win the television. And sometimes people will it's like this psychology thing where it's like guilt. Where it's like, I'll give you a little bit of time. I'll let you come give me an estimate. I'll let you come do this or that for me because of the free thing that you gave me, or that I have a chance to win because I really didn't mean it, but I'll let you go through your spiel anyway. And especially if you're sending people out on site, or it's a discovery call where you're spending 20 minutes or a half hour or an hour directly with one person, you're wasting your time doing this.
Yeah. And it was funny because we know somebody who used to do like the door-to-door pre-sales, that his job was to go in and say, hey, do you need new windows? Oh yeah, you need new windows. And he was like the appointment booker. And a lot of older people will actually sign up for that because they're lonely and they just want somebody to visit with. And so they will sign up for everybody who comes to the door because they want somebody to spend an hour with.
Okay, I think we might be having our first technical issue. I don't know if anyone can hear me. Okay, so I'm going to pick it up right here because I'm not sure what happened to Kristin. Maybe she's trying to come back in right now. I think I see her come back in, and there's now a third empty Kristin window here.
That's so weird.
And she's a owner there. So, okay, so thank you very much for sharing that with me, Deborah. The loveliness of why. I figured it was going to be the baby going off right behind me.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Hopefully Deborah can hear you now. Yeah, you just kind of froze up there. So, So I think the next thing we want to get into here is the scarcity advantage. There's this power in the idea of scarcity. And scarcity is something that you use as a psychological tool when you sell people. That's why you give coupons, so you can get a special deal if it comes out this day. You can still do scarcity with people. And actually, a time frame itself is a good way to get to scarcity. So that's just, I think, one thing to keep in mind with this is scarcity is your friend. Keep it in mind. And if you want to have a deal where you go out like 60 or 90 days, you need something that incentivizes them to sign when you're in front of them. That's your most powerful time. If you don't have that, but once again, to be careful with that too, because if there's too big of a difference, is like, why is it worth so much less to you if I sign today versus next week? And will you hold true to that? You have to be genuine with your scarcity. If you do offer the scarcity and you don't honor your scarcity, it will hurt you. And I think that's where a lot of service companies I see and contractors kind of get in trouble, because we know we can call back and get a deal maybe even better than the one we did before, because part of they're doing is they're trying to haggle with us over something that's very expensive.
Right. So things like one-time offers and self-liquidating offers where you're discounting the price of a product, especially if it's like a digital product, like people understand like, okay, there's not necessarily a lot of additional cost. when somebody buys an additional digital product, so they can kind of understand like, okay, you're giving me 50% off because you want me to act right now. Okay, that's fine. But when you see, like a 25% price difference in a service, that's something that people kind of go, wait a minute, how is that possible? Right. So, especially like with the roofing contractor, when they said, well, if you act today, we're going to take $7,000 off the price of the job. I was kind of like, really? Like that's a lot on a, on a service-based job, especially when there are materials involved. So, I think using price scarcity is kind of a tough way to go if you're doing something that's service related. Plus I'm not a big fan of discounting your services. And so I think that, I think using something that says, okay, this price is good for 30 days or 60 days. And then after that, we're going to have to look at it again, and say, I'm not saying that the price is going to go up, but I can't guarantee this proposal. I also can't guarantee that I'm going to have the time in my schedule to work with you if you don't act within the next 30 days. And I think if you're a service provider, especially like, I know that we've got some folks that are VAs in HQ. We've got people who do marketing consulting. So if you're doing any sort of consulting or client work, part of the scarcity is this is good for 30 days because I'm talking to a whole bunch of people and I can only take on so much work. So if you want to work with me, if you want one of my time slots, you need to act.
If your time frame is within the next month or two, you need to sign now to guarantee that we can start within the next month or two. That would be a secondary approach to the scarcity instead of making it strictly price.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that works really well. I've actually done that, when I've got a whole bunch of inquiries for tax clients and I know I only have like one slot, then one of the things that I will do is I'll tell people, hey, listen, if you want to work with me, I need you to pull the trigger within the next 14 because I've got this slot and I only have one slot available. And so I think that works really, really well.
Awesome.
Okay. So, now some people would say, okay, well, there's got to be some reasons that people do use the strategy of using a really long time frame, like the 1 year time frame. And so why would you want to use that?
Yeah. And I think one thing you can think of right here is you see a lot with contractors for remodeling and stuff like that. And the thought is commercial, if you're working commercially, most people are short on cash. And so they have to get the financing worked around. They have to get several steps and ducks in the row to have the money, the 10 or 15 or $30,000 to do whatever job you're doing. And so they're worried that people won't sign if they are not at that moment able to fulfill the criteria.
Right. So if you do like a 30-day time pressure, it's not enough time for people to make the decision. So they say, okay, if the price is good for a year, then you can come back after you've gotten the financing, after you've talked to other people, you figured out that this is something that you really want to do. Maybe there are multiple projects that you're trying to figure out which one you're going to do first. So it gives them kind of the time to settle all that out.
Yeah. And, I think it's where you set the time for that, because I kind of agree with Kristin where I think the 1 year thing is too long, because remember, it's not time to start the project. It's time to lock in a price. And the problem is when you put too far out, you're going to get people who kind of keep leading you down that path. Like, well, yeah, maybe in a year I might want to do it. So I'm not going to tell the person I don't want to do it at all. I'm just going to say, oh, maybe, yeah, give me the quote and I might get back to you, which leaves you following up with them in 3 months, in 6 months, in 9 months. You have to, I think, work to, and the problem is I haven't seen a lot of like studies, and I'm sure there's maybe some out there that go into, is there success within industries and at what time lengths? The thing is, if it's not working for you the way it is now, that's something you can maybe play with. But, when you change it, you have to see how is it working in comparison to before. So if I do it next April and I make it 30 days instead of 90 days, do I increase my sales or do I decrease my sales? And I can't change other things. I need to change one thing at a time to see if it has an effect. So, the thing is, I just really didn't see a lot of good data out there talking about what time frame works, and maybe it varies per industry. If you're doing business to consumer versus business to business, I know if you're working with the government, there's no way you're getting a 30-day time frame because it can't go through all of the steps. So a lot of it depends partially on who your customer is. But it's one of those things where you do have to work out. But my bigger fear here is, and this is something that I know we've talked about definitely with HQ. I'm not sure if we talked about the podcast, but is this idea of anchoring prices. It's a technique that you use very successfully when you're doing a sales pitch. You set, what the value, what everything that they would get out of your product or service would give them, but skies, it's like the number of hours I spend working with you. You calculate every possible dollar amount you can to make it as large as it possibly can. And what you do is you're creating a false anchor point where to them, the value of this is $100,000 and you're going to sell it to them for like $10,000. So that's a technique you can use in your favor during the sales call. But in a way, once you've given them an estimate, guess what you've just done? You fixed an anchor in their head for what the value of the project is. So now if, your staffing cost goes up or some other cost goes up and you're forced to up your estimate that year down the road, you have to remember and keep that in mind because you might get in trouble where they're like, wait, how come this is now 25% more? Well, unfortunately, my staffing cost has gone up. You have to realize that's a risk once you've really said this is what the price will be.
Well, I think it'd be really interesting because I like the idea of the anchor pricing, and I think that's why they do it. Because, when you kind of sit there and you go, it's really tempting. Like when the guy was here, I'll tell you, like psychologically, and it's really funny. When we have people try to pitch us stuff now, we actually like look at the psychology and the techniques and we're like, oh, that's that technique. Okay, they're doing this over there.
He's trying to get us to say yes. He was really good at that. Really good at that.
Yeah, he was okay. So what do you think of this? You like that, right? Or this makes sense to you, right? And he was trying to get us to say yes, so that when he closed, when he made the pitch, we would say yes. But it was interesting because when he came out with the first price and we went, oh my God, that's a lot of money. And it was funny because then, he came out with a price and then he came out with another price and then he came out with his best price. You kind of look there and go, well, that's a really big difference than the original price. And that's a huge discount, if you're running the numbers in your head.
And all I have to do is sign today.
Right. And if I just sign today, I can get that price. And so I think psychologically, it probably works really well with a lot of people when, they have that price anchored in their head that it's going to cost this much, if I do it within the next year. But if I sign before he leaves today, I'm going to get this amazing price. And but the thing is, I'd love to see like data, and there's no way you're ever going to get this out of a business, unless it's your own business. I'd love to see the data on, okay, how long did it take to close people and what was the final price we gave them? Kind of where did it come in that range? Because the one thing that he did say before he left is he said, well, if you call us, we're always going to look at what deals and incentives we're running at that point, and we will adjust the pricing for any of those, promotions or deals that we have going on at that time. So you're kind of like, yeah, okay, that anchor price is not, in any realm of the possibility what we're going to pay. So,
and I would say
that was kind of interesting.
And I would say too, I think one of the worries is, it's like, once you give them that year-long estimate, if they come back to you a year and a month later, and now it's 25% higher, though, you've created that new anchor in their head. So that's now the value is not the higher $35,000 or $60,000; it's the $23,000. So if I come back and say it's $30,000 and I mean it, I better understand up front that if I'm reading their face, I need to instantly recognize if they're bothered by that. Which they're going to be. You have to kind of work to that price again the next time you talk to them, because if you just email out a quote saying what the price is which was your best, which is your new best price, and it's much higher, you have to start and work back down the price. You can't just throw out what your best offer is if it's a lot higher than it was the year before.
So I'd be really interested to know from either the people who are watching live, or if you're watching this afterwards, leave us a comment, because I'd like to know when you're buying things and people are playing this game with the the sticky price and then their best offer price. Psychologically, is that working for you? Or are you kind of at the point now that you've been doing business long enough that that this is a sales technique and therefore it doesn't really work with you anymore? So I'd love to know, wherever you're watching this, leave us a comment, or go to facebook.com/groups/smallbizlife and, and post there, because I'd love to kind of know, like, psychology wise, is this something that you guys are aware, is going on? In sales, have you been on sales long enough that you kind of go, I know what they're doing there, right? That's the anchor price. This is their best offer price. And it's all a psychological thing. I'd be really interested to know if that is, if that's something that you're picking up from salespeople. So, think about your own sales process. And, a couple things that we want you to take away from this episode. First of all, are you putting a deadline on your proposals? And I want you to think about, that deadline. Make sure that it's appropriate for your business. And then when you're putting in that deadline, why are you creating a deadline? Because you have to be able to sell that to the customer. A lot of customers go, well, why is it only valid for 2 weeks? Or why is it only valid for 30 days? Make sure you have an argument. So it could be because prices are always changing. It could be because, because you have limited time slots available for people to work with you. It could be because, if they don't act within 30 days, then you're in the 6 months. And at that point, the cost will be different. So, I mean, that's the thing, is like, I think, you need to make sure that you have that in your mind, why you're setting it. So that way, when people come to you and ask you why, you can make a good argument for it. Okay. And then one thing I absolutely love. So Julie Stoyan is teaching a new way to do service proposals. And essentially she is teaching how to get paid for service proposals. Okay.
Brilliant
I love
idea.
this.
It really is. Yeah.
I love this. So, if you go to smallbizlife.com and go to the show notes for episode 130, or if you're watching this on Facebook, we'll put the links, in the Facebook video. We'll also have the link up in YouTube. Go check out her webinar where she explains how to do this, because it is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
So,
it really is, especially let her explain it, because it's pure brilliance.
Yeah, because you just go, oh my God, that is just, it's amazing. Okay, so definitely go check out that webinar, because it's brilliant. So I want to thank you so much. I know we had some technical difficulties today, but it was a lot of fun doing this live and watching your comments. It makes it much more fun for us to do the podcast. We'd love to have you join us again. If you go to facebook.com/smallbizlifepodcast, you can like our page, and that's where we're going to broadcast all of these. So we'd love to have you join us next week when we're doing this. So thank you guys so much, and have a great day.